6. From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. The straws in the wind are these tonight. The Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff have returned from their weekend in Saudi Arabia with a public message of caution about getting into the ground war too quickly. After they briefed the President today, Mr. Bush said that the air war will continue for a while before any land war begins, which doesn't give Saddam Hussein any real clue as to when the U.S. will make its next move. We begin at the White House tonight with ABC's Britt Hume.
After an hour and 40-minute meeting with Defense Secretary Cheney and Joint Chiefs Chairman Powell, the President emerged to say the war is going well, and he strongly indicated he doesn't plan to change the way it is being fought anytime soon.
The air campaign has been very, very effective, and it will continue for a while. We're not talking about dates for further adding to the air campaign, put it that way. We are going to take whatever time is necessary to sort out when a next stage might begin.
The President said holding down U.S. and allied casualties would be his first priority. There have been complaints from some foreign capitals, including Moscow, that the air war, designed to curb allied losses, has caused excessive and unnecessary damage in Iraq.
We're the ones that are going to set the time for how this war is, the time for any action that is taken. We are not going to suit somebody else's timetable, whether he lives in Baghdad or any place else.
In fact, the President suggested no final decision on whether there will be a ground war has yet been made, though his military commanders have strongly indicated some sort of ground action is inevitable.
If they come to me and say there needs to be another phase, then I will then make that decision, because that is a decision for the President of the United States.
In the meantime, the President must deal with the diplomatic and political consequences of the air war. His press secretary said today, for example, that Saddam Hussein is having some success in convincing people in the Middle East and elsewhere that the Allied bombing is aimed at destroying Iraq. Britt Hume, ABC News, the White House.
Military commanders continue to insist that Allied bombs are aimed at military targets, not civilian ones. And again, they say, with considerable success. Here's ABC's Bob Zelnick.
Military commanders in Saudi Arabia turned Secretary Cheney and Chairman Powell into advocates for delaying the ground campaign by producing compelling evidence that the air war is working and has more work to do. The figures made public this weekend show at least 750 Iraqi tanks, 600 other armored vehicles, and 650 artillery pieces destroyed. Altogether, a loss of about 20% of Iraq's combat capability in the Kuwait theater.
So it seems to me that the wise thing to do would be to keep on doing what we're doing. Let's make it as easy on that foot soldier as we possibly can before we go.
According to military sources, Desert Storm commanders would like 30 days of additional bombing. They say they could damage Iraqi equipment, supplies, and morale to the point where many large units will have to be withdrawn, no longer able to conduct combat. But the White House may not give the military a full 30 days of bombing alone. And in the meantime, there may be probing attacks across enemy lines in order to see how the Iraqis respond and the Allies perform. Bob Zelnick, ABC News at the Pentagon.
On these particular numbers, a short while ago, we talked to our military analyst, Tony Cordesman, about the latest briefings on the military campaign. Tony, help us to understand a little better what these numbers represent. 750 main battle tanks destroyed.
Peter, if those numbers are correct, they're 20% of all the tanks they have in the Kuwaiti theater. More importantly, we've concentrated on their most capable forces, and that means they probably lost most of their T-72s and their T-72Ms, the only tanks which can directly compete with our M1 battle tanks and with the British Challengers.
650 artillery pieces.
That in some ways is equally important. If we've concentrated on their long-range artillery, we've not only destroyed 20% of all the artillery they have present, but that's the only weapon they have that can really reach and kill our advancing infantry and armored fighting vehicles at any distance from the forward positions.
Tony Cordesman in Washington, thanks again. As Tony Cordesman points out frequently, it is impossible to get a completely clear picture of how much damage is being done It is also virtually impossible for soldiers right on the front line. ABC's Jim Hickey reports that at night they can see the outline of battle, but it's often just enough to get the imagination working overtime.
From the front lines, at night, you can see bombs explode on Iraqi positions in Kuwait. The air war is that close. Watching it, Marines know a ground war might also be close. They think about dying, and they think that back home, maybe people aren't ready for it.
We're not Supermen. I'd like to be, but yeah, we're going to suffer casualties. America has to brace down for the fact that it's going to happen.
In the darkness, as jet fighters race overhead, it is impossible not to dwell on the enemy and on his chemical weapons.
He's got all these different things, but what is he going to use? Those things all plague on your mind, and you have to just, once again, react.
Each soldier prepares for battle in his own way.
Only way I can see myself going through, take it as it comes. Take it in stride.
But it takes some effort to keep the fear under control. Without night vision lenses, it is pitch black out there. So dark, they couldn't see the enemy 100 yards away.
We're clear on this side.
Thoughts crowd in about survival, about family, thoughts that are painful and difficult.
Will I live through this? Will my men live through this? How my family will go on without... I think that's the worst fears.
There is fear out there, all right. But the Marines will tell you the day the ground war begins is one day closer to getting home. That is what they hang on to.
What did I keep telling you? Home by when?
April.
Home by April. We'll see what happens.
Jim Hickey, ABC News, Saudi Arabia.
Iraq has fired another Scud missile at Israel. It is the 12th attack so far. The Israeli army says it landed in an unpopulated area in the central part of the country. They would not get more specific than that. It happened while the Israeli defense minister, Moshe Aarons, was in the Oval Office in Washington with President Bush. In a moment, our man in Baghdad. Thanks to the Iraqis, it's taken a while. The restrictions on reporting the war from Saudi Arabia as well as from Iraq. And tonight, how they're feeling about the war in Gettysburg, South Dakota.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Brought to you by Jeep and Eagle.
So don't tell me about waiting. What if we'd waited for the other guys on driver's airbags? You remember that? Too soon, too expensive. The public doesn't want them. You remember? We put them in every car we build in the U.S. And standard. And we didn't even price for them. And now I got a pile of letters saying, thanks for saving my life. And other guys in the industry are saying, we'll have them standard too. Maybe in 1994, maybe 1995. Then what did we hear? Wait on airbags for minivans. Nobody puts an airbag in a minivan. It's too tough to engineer them. Well, we did it anyway. No waiting, they're here. Sure, people still have to wear seatbelts with a minivan airbag. So what? Everybody should wear a seatbelt. No, some things you wait for, some things you don't. Minivans with airbags, you don't wait.
Now the news from Iraq. The Iraqi government today ordered all 17-year-old male students to report for military duty. Until now, students had been exempted from the general draft. They won't be any longer. In Iraq today, the religious affairs minister said that Iraqi civilians were being killed in the thousands. The statement marked somewhat of a departure for the Iraqi government, which heretofore has said that fewer than 1,000 had died in Allied bombing raids. It has been hard to judge the accuracy of these claims for ourselves because we've not been able to report from Baghdad since the war began. Over the weekend, ABC's Bill Blakemore and a camera crew were finally given visas and allowed to travel in from Jordan. Like all the journalists there, Bill is allowed to go only where the government takes him, and all his reports are censored.
Last night in Baghdad, as most every night in this capital now, there were a number of airstrikes between sunset and sunrise, each time setting off loud air raid sirens and anti-aircraft tracer shells arcing into the darkness. The white flashes are the bombs going off. This morning, the Iraqi Ministry of Information took us to see some of the recent damage. About half of the bridges which cross the Tigris River as it flows through Baghdad are now hit, including this one called the 14th of Ramadan Bridge, and this, the Shuhada Bridge downtown, damaged enough so it is now for pedestrians only. With most offices and stores now closed, many had the free time to come and look. With no electricity or running water, no gasoline for private cars, and with Allied bombing runs several times each night in and around the capital, successively picking off particular targets, the mood here in Baghdad is very much one of a city under siege. The Ministry of Information today also took journalists for their second trip to a bombed plant where we saw piles of powdered milk packets marked January 1991, congealed by searing heat, scattered under the rubble around the machines which packaged them. The American military has said this was a biological weapons facility. The manager of the plant, Mr. Yusuf Nouri, told us that a contract had been signed with the White Company in the United States to operate the plant. But he said after the crisis began, he started producing milk here without waiting for the White Company, and was producing milk up until it was bombed. Iraqi Ministry of Information spokesmen say this shows America is trying to destroy Iraq, not just fight for Kuwait. By late afternoon, after more air raids, there were more pillars of dark smoke out on the edge of the capital. And after sunset, again, more air raids, anti-aircraft tracers, and the white flashes of bombs. Bill Blakemore, ABC News in Baghdad.
The baby formula company which Bill Blakemore referred to appears to be the Wyeth Erst company. Wyeth Erst officials say they had been talking to Iraqi businessmen about equipment to produce a baby formula called SMA at that plant near Baghdad. The discussions ended with the invasion of Kuwait. Shortly after Bill Thal, we talked to him briefly about what he was hearing and seeing, and what, if anything, Iraqis were seeing and hearing about the war. Do people have a sense of what is going on, do you believe?
It's impossible to escape a sense of what's going on here in Baghdad. There's the nightly raids, there's no electricity, no water, so they have a general sense, certainly, that there's quite a war on, and combined with the radio that they're listening to, they certainly do.
Bill, in all of the reporting from Baghdad, the emphasis has been on civilian casualties. Can you tell whether or not this is a powerful issue among Iraqis?
My impression is that it is a powerful issue among the Iraqis. I believe the local Iraqi television is out of order for the present. They're just listening to the radio. There are, as in wartime, a lot of stories and a lot of rumors around. We do know that we've seen videotape of civilian casualties in Basra and other cities and towns in the south. I've talked to the journalists who have been on those trips, so we know that there is some. They care very much about it, but again, it's hard for me to assess just exactly how much there has been, or just exactly how much people feel there has been.
Bill, you were on a bridge today doing a portion of your report, and a lot of Iraqis were there with you. Did they know you were an American?
Yes, they did. In fact, a number of times since I've been in Iraq, people have said, "Are you an American or not?" And there's no personal animosity, if that's what you're asking. People realize that we're journalists. We all say the Arabic word sahafi, which means journalist, and people understand immediately that we're here to report. I've experienced no personal animosity of any kind.
Bill Blakemore in Baghdad. The U.S. military briefer in Saudi Arabia acknowledged today the difficulty of avoiding civilians in the city of Basra. Though it's reported that most civilians have fled the city, Basra serves as Iraqi military headquarters for the Southern Front down near Kuwait. Brigadier General Richard Neal says Iraq has put so many military targets in Basra's neighborhoods they are difficult to separate out. And Iraqi TV released pictures today of Saddam Hussein meeting with some of his senior officers. The war is affecting even the top brass. Notice a couple of the men wearing coats inside. It is not just civilians who are apparently going without home heating oil. The Soviet official Evgeny Primakov arrived in Baghdad tonight for a meeting with Saddam Hussein. Mr. Primakov's goal, according to some Soviet officials, assure Hussein that Iraq would not be punished further if it withdraws from Kuwait. When Mr. Gorbachev announced the Primakov mission over the weekend, he said that Allied attacks were becoming so alarming in scope, there was a danger of exceeding the United Nations mandate. When we come back, managing the news in Iraq and in Saudi Arabia.
Recently, DuPont announced that its energy unit would pioneer the use of new double-hulled oil tankers in order to safeguard the environment. The response has been overwhelmingly positive. better things for better living.
Ford Motor Company profiles in quality, customer satisfaction.
Today we realize that quality has got to be number one.
I said that back in '82, and today it's truer than ever.
The looks attracted me, but the performance sold me.
After 2 years, it still shines like new.
We love hearing things like that.
The only thing better than a Sable
is 2 Sables.
Our goal is to build the highest quality cars and trucks in the world.
At Ford, quality is job one.
Flu rages across the U.S. Now in 46 states. What will you do? Doctors recommend Theraflu, hot liquid medicine that works fast. Theraflu, strong therapy for flu symptoms.
It was a night for amore. When they brought the grated topping, I said, oh, no more. See, some are 1/3 fats and fillers, but Kraft is 100% grated Parmesan for 100% great taste. Now that's amore like it.
We've not reported much on this broadcast about the quality of information from either the U.S. or the Iraqi side, other than to remind you when reports were censored, which, as you surely know by now, is virtually all the time from Iraq and from Saudi Arabia. It is becoming a matter of greater tension. Many Americans frustrated by Iraqi manipulation. Many people now complaining that the Pentagon is choking coverage of the war. Tonight from Baghdad and from Saudi Arabia, 2 brief reports on just how the censorship works. First, once again, Bill Blakemore in Iraq.
Well, first of all, our movements are restricted. We can't leave the hotel area without a representative of the Ministry of Information. They've taken us out to a few places today in town, for example. The script process is very normal for wartime, I would say. The process with the censors is one in which we generally understand that we will not talk about anything military, anything strategic, or anything that has any measurements in it. We write our scripts, we find one of the censors who's down in the hotel lobby, and we show it to the censor, who then reads it, and sometimes there's a slight change of word here or there. Very often you may say something that you didn't even realize would touch a sensitivity, but there's not been any kind of heavy censorship in my experience here so far. It's a fairly easy understanding we have.
Bill Blakemore in Baghdad. As you know, there's a vastly larger press corps in Saudi Arabia than in Iraq, and as you may guess, when American reporters run into as many restrictions as they do covering American forces, there is bound to be the kind of wrestling match which would never be tolerated in Iraq. It is also true to say that never in modern history have American reporters been faced with so many restrictions. ABC's Mort Dean reports on how the system works.
If there's a story you want to do, any story, you need permission.
No. We don't need do we need to have somebody with us or just a letter? Somebody will go with you.
If it's a story about the Saudi military or anything else about Saudi Arabia, you need permission from the Saudi Ministry of Information. A Saudi escort is then provided.
You need your height and weight in feet and pounds.
If it's a story about American troops, you need permission from the American military, and a U.S. military escort goes along. But rarely is permission granted. The U.S. military and the Saudis operate pools, small groups of selected reporters who travel with their escorts out to see the troops. Escorts who often decide what can and cannot be reported. But the controls do not end there. All reports from the field must be reviewed and approved by military censors. Any information journalists get on their own is not reviewed by censors. A growing number of reporters who bridle at the restrictions are now going off on their own. But more and more of them have been picked up by military police and detained, often for hours. Veteran AP reporter Mort Rosenblum wanted to do a story about an armored division.
The MP colonel, who we stopped for directions to the public affairs officer, turned us over to the MPs, and they held us for 3 hours, essentially at gunpoint.
The growing concern here is that this continuing crackdown by the military is limiting what Americans are learning about the war.
You never see any problems. You're never allowed to report. Nothing's ever wrong. This entire war has become videotapes of planes always hitting their targets like giant Nintendo games and soldiers up front eating turkey and waving flags, and it's a lie.
Today, only 36 American reporters were allowed into the field to cover the activities of more than 500,000 American troops. Morton Dean, ABC News, Saudi Arabia.
There were 16 pools today. Only 3 of them were actually activated. We'll have more news in a moment.
the road, the Infiniti Q45 becomes a living, breathing thing. You feel it work the wind and seize the road. Feel the embrace of leather and luxury. The rarity of a 278 horsepower V8 engine that was born to run. And begin to understand why Road and Track has named it one of the 10 best cars in the world.
When 1 in 4 adults looks at dairy food, their stomach says stop. Say no now, or pay later. Antacids aren't made for this problem, called lactose intolerance. But new Dairy Ease is. It's not an antacid, but a natural nutritional supplement that helps comfortable digestion of ice cream, cheese, and milk. Now enjoy dairy food as naturally as everyone else with pleasant-tasting, chewable new Dairy Ease.
What traits do you look for in a financial firm? A herd mentality? Unsteadiness? Complacency? Or do you look for strength? Stability? Knowledge of the world? What traits do you look for?
Every business morning, while the rest of the world is getting up, UPS is guaranteeing overnight delivery before 10:30 to the most people, places, and businesses for up to half what other companies charge. And every business morning, more people are waking up to that fact.
Good morning.
Good morning.
In the other news today, 2 more signs of trouble for department stores. The nation's largest retailer, Sears, has announced today it will eliminate another 9,000 jobs because of the slump in the economy. And the biggest department store chain in the West has filed for bankruptcy. The Carter Hawley Hale Corporation operates the Broadway, the Emporium, and the Weinstock stores. They also cite the recession. Another airline in trouble, U.S. Air, which lost $221 million in the last quarter of 1990, says it will lay off more than 3,500 employees and shut several facilities. The airline blames the recession, though a lot of passengers have also been nervous about flying, despite the increased security on board and at airports. And on Wall Street, the stock market, which gained 100 points last week, picked up 71 points today. The Dow Jones Industrials closed at 2902, and the trading was very heavy. Overseas again, in South Africa, setback for the government's assault case against Winnie Mandela. A key prosecution witness has been kidnapped. Mrs. Mandela, the wife of Nelson Mandela, is charged in the kidnapping and assault of 4 teenage anti-apartheid activists, one of whom died. Some African National Congress members say it all is an attempt by the government to embarrass the anti-apartheid movement. One other note, the head of Soviet broadcasting, appointed by President Gorbachev in November, said today that he supports increased censorship of the news. He said he has already been altering reports for political reasons. We'll be back in just a moment.
It seems that every time you turn around these days, another pain reliever with ibuprofen in it is comparing itself to Tylenol. But you know what they can't say? They can't say they're gentler than Tylenol, because they're not. Tylenol won't irritate your stomach the way ibuprofen sometimes can. That's a medical fact. And is it any wonder that today hospitals use Tylenol 14 times more than ibuprofen? Tylenol, the pain reliever hospitals use most.
Because of high cholesterol, 1 out of 4 adults is gambling with heart disease. You can leave it to chance or do something about it with a diet including Fleischmann's margarine. 0 cholesterol, low saturated fat. Fleischmann's, because your heart is in your hands.
Milk-Bone dog biscuits, dog treats, and flavor snacks. Happy Valentine's Day.
They weren't expecting a 70-year-old coach, that's for sure. But I held my own.
All right, come on.
They never even saw how scared I was. I wouldn't have tried for this job if it hadn't been for AARP. They've got a program that convinces employers that it's smart to hire people like me. I'm not old. People are people. Some of us have just had a little more practice. That's all.
AARP, making a difference.
Tonight on Nightline, the Israeli defense minister and the Iraqi ambassador to France, as Scud missiles continue to fall on Israel. We'll talk with them tonight.
Finally here this evening, our man on Route 83. Shortly after the war began, we asked Tom Foreman, our correspondent based in Denver, to get in a car and make his way down the highway, which pretty much cuts the country in half, from Canada all the way down to the border with Mexico. The last time we checked in, he was in Minot, North Dakota, seeing what effect the war was having on people's lives there. Tonight, he's in South Dakota, Gettysburg, South Dakota.
In a cemetery on the plains of South Dakota, Co Frankhauser is looking for the people of his past.
There are quite a lot of them all over the cemetery.
Looking at the graves of his grandfather and the other founders of his hometown.
Why they picked up here, I don't know, but this is where they came to.
Looking at the past may provide clues to the present here. This is Gettysburg, South Dakota, a town founded by veterans of the pivotal battle of the worst war this nation has ever known. Friends who came for free land and peace. Local historian Winifred Fawcett knew the last Civil War soldier who lived here. She thinks soldiers today are fighting for the same thing he fought for.
Then we were fighting for unity. I think we're fighting for unity of the world.
People like Phyllis Wise want the sacrifices of the past remembered. That's why townspeople are building a museum to remind themselves and the next generation of all those from here who fought in America's wars.
Life is so easy for them now, I think, and they don't realize what their forefathers went through to make things so good for them.
At the local high school, every student in this government class is behind the soldiers.
You'll never see any marches against the war here in Gettysburg because there's no way that you can be for the troops and against the war.
People here support the war for the same reason soldiers go into battle, because the nation's leaders have decided they should.
We just have to sort of trust their judgment and go with them.
Outside the courthouse, dozens of flags fly. Flags that once draped the coffins of the town's veterans.
No, I'd like to believe that there won't be any more wars, but I think it's a vain hope.
Gettysburg knows the price of war. Tom Foreman, ABC News, Gettysburg, South Dakota.
That is our report on World News tonight. We'll have a report on the Gulf every hour on the hour, and then later this evening on Nightline. I'm Peter Jennings. Have a good evening. Good night.
And now, the news continues with Channel 2 News at 6.
Good evening, I'm Ann Holt.
And I'm Bob Mueller. In our news.